Okay, so it has been a long day, so we're going to go on and get started. We are recording this, so we'll be sure to push it out on our social media channels. But we do want to say welcome and good evening. Senators, is this the first time that the Newport News delegation has gotten together like this? Okay, well, I know it's the first time we've done it virtually. so there's that. I'll just do brief introductions and then kind of give you an overview of how it's going to go for the evening. But we have, of course, with us Senator Mamie Locke, who serves the 2nd Senatorial District, serving parts of Hampton, Newport News, Portsmouth, and York County as previously drawn. And she's been a member of the Senate since 2004. She is the chair of the Senate Democratic Caucus, and she serves as chair of the Rules Committee and also serves on Education and Health, Finance and Appropriations, General Laws and Technology, and Rehabilitation and Social Services. And then we also have with us Senator Monty Mason, who serves the 1st Senatorial District with part of Hampton, Newport News, York County, all of Williamsburg, part of James City County, and part of Suffolk. And he's been a member of the Senate since 2016 after being in the House of Delegates. The committees he serves on are Agriculture, Conservation and Natural Resources, Commerce and Labor, General Laws and Technology, Privileges and Elections, Rehabilitation and Social Services. Then we also have with us Delegate Mike Mullin that represents the 93rd District. We'll talk a little bit about district numbers later, but currently he serves the 93rd District with the counties part of James City County, York County, part of the city of Newport News, and then Williamsburg. He's been a member since November 22nd of 2016 and serves on County, Cities and Towns, and Commerce and Energy. And then we also have Delegate Shelley Simonds that serves the 94th District with part of Newport News and has been a member since 2020. And she serves on Education, Privileges and Elections, and Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources. And I am Delegate Sia Price. I serve the 95th District, which has parts of Newport News, a tiny bit of Hampton, and I've been a member since 2016, and I currently serve on Health, Welfare, and Institutions and General Laws. So that is who we are. And this evening, I just want to give you a kind of an overview of what we're going to do this evening. We are going to hear from each member a brief update. It can be our legislation, updates from session, but just a general overview. And then we're going to answer some of the questions that you all submitted when you registered for tonight. And then we'll open it up using the raise your hand feature for those that have statements. We're not getting into a debate tonight, guys. We've been debating all day. So this really is your opportunity to hear from us and then for us to hear from you. I can just be honest, we're not really looking at the chat, but if you need to send us any messages, Tempest Boone would be the person to send that to, my chief of staff, who's helping us with this evening. So with that, first we will kick it over to you, Senator Locke.
Thank you, Delegate Price, and good evening, everyone. Thank you all so very much for joining your Newport News delegation for this town hall meeting. We're so excited that you have taken time out of your busy schedules to be with us this evening. What I'd like to do is to talk to you a little bit about the legislation that I've carried that survived the Senate and passed over to the House. Then look forward to engaging with you after all of us have spoken. What's very, very important to me is the constitutional amendment, which I do believe finally has been docketed, I think, in House Privileges and Election, and that's SJ1, a constitutional amendment that deals with the qualification of voters and the right to vote. And this is the second reference of this amendment. Believe me, folks, I have no delusions about what's going to happen to this amendment. But it does provide that every person who meets the qualifications of voters set forth in the Constitution shall have the fundamental right to vote in the Commonwealth, and that such rights shall not be abridged by law. And that is very, very important, because what else is more fundamental than that right to vote in a democracy? And essentially, it automatically restores the right to vote to those who have been convicted. And once that person steps out of jail, they automatically have their rights restored. And it also automatically restores the right to vote to those who have been deemed mentally incompetent once that competency has been restored as well. And tied to that amendment are two bills, SB 21, which simply puts that constitutional amendment on the ballot in November, which allows all of you to determine whether or not you believe that this should go into the Constitution. And SB 767, which establishes the criteria for those released from incarceration. It sets out the guidelines for how those rights will be restored. Other legislation that has passed over to the House is a bill dealing with the licensure of teachers, and it's a reciprocity agreement for those who are military spouses. That is, if that person has a license to teach, it sets up guidelines that allows that person to be licensed to teach in the Commonwealth. Also, I have several years ago when Virginia was on the front page of the New York Times dealing with evictions, the Housing Commission passed several bills dealing with evictions, and one of those was an eviction diversion pilot program that we had established that had Hampton, Richmond, Danville, and Petersburg as localities that would be a part of this diversion program. But once it had been established, the pandemic hit. So we weren't able to fully execute the program in a way that we would be able to collect the data necessary to figure out how we could prevent individuals from eviction. So it was put on hold. So this piece of legislation, SB 24, extends the sunset for the eviction diversion pilot program, so that we would be able to collect the necessary data to determine the kind of legislation that the General Assembly would be able to use to determine eviction policies that are necessary to prevent individuals from being evicted from their homes in the first place. Also, Delegate McQuinn and I serve on a subcommittee dealing with de jure and de facto racial and economic discrimination against African Americans. That legislation was passed a couple of years ago, but also because of the pandemic, we were not able to collect the kind of data that was necessary to kind of get that ball rolling on that subcommittee. So SB 151 establishes an additional year of study for that subcommittee as well. A very significant piece of legislation that I think is important is SB 47, which establishes a housing opportunity tax credit. We did pass the bill last year, but it did not allow for stackable tax credits. So I brought it back again this year to be able to put in that piece of it and to to establish a sunset, as well as to determine a cap for those tax credits and to better align the program with the federal program. It did pass the Senate, and we put in a significant amount of funding for the program. So it's in the House now, in-house appropriations. So I did talk to the appropriations chair and finally got him on board with where we want to take this program, because it's very important that we have affordable housing in the Commonwealth. And the business community is on board with wanting to use these tax credits to build the kind of housing that's necessary for affordable housing. So hopefully we can get this passed this year in a way that's beneficial to the community and have the kind of housing that our community needs to prevent homelessness and to prevent eviction. So I'll stop there, Delegate Price, and kick it over to Senator Mason.
Hey, thank you very much, Senator Locke. So I started the morning this morning at 8 a.m. with Delegate Simonds and one of her subcommittees. Just finished the night at 6:30 with Senator Locke and General Laws and Delegate Price, who brought an unbelievable bill, bringing two important sides together to do some good work. The only person that I've been avoiding today is Delegate Mullin, but I'm sure I'll bump into him tomorrow in one of his committees because we've got a lot of our bills going over the other side. Several things I've been working for. The shipyard brought me an advanced manufacturing bill this year that replicates. A couple of years ago, we did a bunch of work in our colleges, universities, and community colleges, focusing on computer science and IT. And so we really incented trying to get degreed people out of our schools that were dealing with data science, computer science, et cetera. We've kind of tried to replicate that with advanced manufacturing and look to community colleges, our dual degree programs in high schools, and our universities to try to go and determine from the shipyard that we know so much and love in our backyard to the glove manufacturer that we just announced out in Southwest Virginia. We need skilled workers. And so coming up with a way to get more credentialed skilled workers is something we're focused on. We got $2 million for it in the House budget, in the Senate budget, and $2.5 million in the House budget. And now we're working to put those two things together, and super excited about that program. I have a healthcare bill that I've brought on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. A couple of years ago, that had passed the General Assembly and unfortunately met some resistance in the governor's office, and he vetoed it. So regardless of what governor won this year, I decided to bring it back. That has crossed over to the House side, and that is trying to figure out, it does not impact the Affordable Care Act, because the Affordable Care Act is for individuals who don't have anywhere else to turn with insurance, trying to bridge them to other programs. This is for companies with 2 to 50 employees. So it's one that we're pushing through. I've also got an electric vehicles bill. The General Assembly made an enormous commitment to electrical vehicles and their adoption in last year. And so what this does is says, you know what, the state's going to put their money where their mouth is. We're going to use a calculator, and and that calculator will tell us, for the vehicle we're looking for, comparable vehicle, and what we want it to do, does it make more sense to buy a standard gas vehicle or an electrical vehicle? And it will take all considerations in, charging, the stations, where it's going. You can get exemptions, but it's really trying to make us as a state step up and do our part for the adoption of electrical vehicles. Have my standard child welfare, foster care, child care work. We're having a really hard time getting employees, so I've got some background check adjustments and just some work there trying to make sure we have people, because we know we're in such an incredible, difficult spot with daycare. And then child welfare and foster care, of course, we're trying to drive more kinship adoptions and trying to make it easier for people to adopt family members and give them the incentive to do so, just like you'd have in a foster family where it's not a kinship situation. And then finally, I work with Marcia so closely in mental health. We're on what was the Needs Commission, that's the Mental Health Commission for the 21st century. So much important work. Right now we have a short-term fix to try to get people out of jail and out of Eastern State and into a mandatory outpatient treatment type of environment. And then we are setting the table for some future opportunity where it's going to take a whole rewrite. We couldn't deal with that this year, but we're setting the table to get information and try to get us to where we're not making it criminal. We're moving it down a civil path. Of course, we also play the budget game. I was thrilled, great expectations back on foster care. We have $1 million, $500,000 a year for those who have been in foster care in their past, that are in our colleges and universities and community colleges. And then Edmark got some money for them to expand on the Virginia Peninsula. That's children with sometimes terminal or sometimes really critical care needs that we're trying to get out of hospitals and get them back home, but they need care and they need help. And then finally, we hiding in plain sight in Williamsburg, we found the Bray School, a school that educated African Americans, some would say indoctrinated African Americans, from 1760 to 1773. We found it when I was at William and Mary as our ROTC headquarters, but it is a building that dates to 1759. And we found it. We're trying to get money to move it. We're trying to get money to interpret it. We're trying to get money to study it and trace the folks that are descendants of those who went to the Bray School. Because coming up in 2026, when we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, maybe for the first time ever, we're going to tell the story of everyone, those that enjoyed the independence and those that did not. And a lot of that's right under our nose on the Virginia Peninsula. And we're going to work super hard to tell the full story. We're getting some money from Richmond to do so. So I'm going to kick it to my friend Delegate Sia Price, and she better tell you about that bill that she just rocked out of general laws that brought dogs and cats living together and solves a huge problem that we need. Nice work. And over to you, Sia.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your vote for that, for that, you and Senator Locke. So this year, I carried 25 bills that range from housing justice, criminal justice reform, health and mental health, education, economic justice, and emergency preparedness. I think I covered all those. So actually 8 got out of the Republican House, and I wanted to go over a few of those. So House Bill 808 is a really good example of how when we listen to those that we serve, we can help fix some of the issues that they're going through. We might have different lived experiences. So if you're not talking with us, we may not know about some of these issues. And so there was a gentleman that came to us who is having child support payments withheld out of his check by his employer. And so every 2 weeks, for 2 children, he gets a fee of $5 a piece. So that comes up to be about $260 a year just for the employer to take other money. And so he inquired with his employer, did it cost them, $5 per withholding? And they said no, but that's what the law says we can charge. So they kind of gave him a little bit of a challenge and said, well, if you get the law fixed, we can do differently. So then he came to my office, and Today, I think, is when the bill passed out. And basically it says, instead of you have to charge $5, if you should choose to charge, it's up to $5. And so that money can go back to the kids as opposed to administrative costs, especially when it doesn't cost the company that much in order to do it. So it may seem small to those that aren't going through that experience, but to those that are going through that experience, it could mean the world. House Bill 800 was to clarify and codify the process of Medicaid coverage for incarcerated individuals. So in some states, if you're a Medicaid holder and you're incarcerated, it cancels the coverage. And when you come out, you have to start the process all over again. So in Virginia, under this, we would continue to suspend the coverage during incarceration for state level funding. You would still have access to the federal level emergency treatment. And then upon your release, it would start again should you remain to be eligible. It also directs the Department of DMAS and Department of Corrections to still talk to each other, because if you're incarcerated and you are eligible for Medicaid, to go on and get you signed up. And so I know that's something that Congressman Scott had been working on the federal level. We wanted to make sure that his hometown was doing the right thing too. House Bill 802 is the bill that Senator Mason was just talking about. And so in Newport News, unfortunately, in different areas of our city, there are let's just be honest, there are slumlords, and a lot of them live out of state, don't even come to the property, and tenants are putting in work order after work order after work order just to have rodent and insect infestations, flooding, mold, mildew, leaks, all of those things continue to happen without resolution. And so the city can get the landlord fined, but those fines don't go to the tenant or to help fix the situation. And currently the agencies like Coast Compliance can condemn a property, but we don't want to condemn properties if they can be fixed, because we don't want even more people dealing with homelessness. So what House Bill 802 does is allows for localities municipalities to literally sue the slumlord in order for them to fix the issue, not just get a slap on the wrist. And so if we get this done, we would be one of the first states in the nation to really be dealing with this in this way. And as Senator Mason and Senator Locke both helped today, that is now headed to the Senate floor. House Bill 1298 is coming before general laws as well next week, hopefully. And that's to ban name, image, and likeness contracts for students younger than college. And that allows for us, if we should ever decide that that's a good idea for them to be eligible for high school students, that would force us to come back and create the same guardrails and player protections as we're doing right now for college students. There have been some egregious studies that I've heard, stories that I've heard with the NFL Players Association of just some really crappy contracts that people were really locked into some terrible terms. So let's say you have an earning potential of $500,000, but you got duped into a contract for $15,000. That's the kind of things that we're trying to prevent our high schoolers and college students from. And then I also had some bills to establish the week of March 12th as Girl Scout Week, August as Black Business Month, September as PADS Awareness Month, and that's peripheral arterial disease. And if you've never heard of that, it's really quite interesting. Some people that experience numbness in their limbs, it's automatically thought that they have diabetes, but it could be PADS. And so we're trying to raise awareness to ask more questions of your doctor and to help prevent amputations. And then May as food allergy awareness, and to really raise awareness that those of us with food allergies are not just picky eaters. Some of us are literally just trying to stay alive. Some of the bills that did not get past the House with the new leadership include the Gun Violence Prevention Center that was in Governor Northam's introduced budget, which would have put $27 million into gun violence prevention in a comprehensive and centralized way. And that didn't make it, but it did make it out of the Senate. And so that is going to be a conversation that that Jennifer McClellan is working on that we'll probably handle within the budget. There was a gun violence survivor fund that was not done. There was even a JLARC study on gun violence just to see if we can study it. And that did not make it. We had a deaths in custody reporting act that literally says from detainment to incarceration, if someone dies in your custody, you have to report it on the state level. That's not being enforced on the federal level at the level that we need it. That did not make it. And then I think two of the most heartbreaking losses that we've had. We spent so much time on barrier crimes, and Mike and I were on, Mike and I were on the Barrier Crimes Commission together, and we heard like meeting after meeting after meeting, people who had made a mistake due to being, substance use disorder. There could have been 20 years that have passed since you made those mistakes, and you still could not be hired for some of the jobs because of the barrier crimes that are listed, meaning they are barriers to employment if you did these certain crimes. And we were listening to folks that want to be peer recovery specialists. And so that's literally someone that has been through an experience, helping someone that's going through it now like no one else can. No one that has not been in that situation can help like someone that was. They want to do this work. The departments want to hire them to do this work, but because of the law, we couldn't get it. So my version of the bill got killed that came out of that commission that I served as vice chair on, but the chair, Senator Edwards, his bill is still alive. So we're hoping that the Republican leadership will at least let us get some of these crimes through. If you don't like some of the others, but these folks really want to be hired. The agencies want to hire them, and they're not able to do the work right now. And then just lastly, in closing, the House budget, the earned income tax credit is the best tax credit available known right now for lifting children out of poverty. And a refundable earned income tax credit could give like a family of four making about $24,700 additional dollars back in their tax refund. And we are not refunding the tax, the earned income tax credit, and that's leaving behind 640,000 families from all across the Commonwealth, including 21,000 in Newport News by making the decision to only do doubling the standard deduction and not do the EITC. That is a choice that is being made to leave behind these families. And I carried the bill that would do the EITC, but of course it did not go through. But the fight is not over because it is still fully funded in the Senate budget, just not the House. So we're looking forward to those conversations moving forward. Thank you. And now I'm going to kick it over to Mike Mullin from the 93rd District.
Well, thank you so much, Delegate Price, for that lovely introduction, but also more importantly for putting this together. It's nice to finally be able to talk with everybody back at home, even if we can't be there in person. I also want to give a special shout out to Tempest Boone, who is the Chief of Staff for Delegate Price, who was able to arrange a lot of this, and I'm so very grateful for that. I think Delegate Price's emphasis on the budget is important, so I'll take that as sort of a cue to start on budgetary issues, which I think are some of the most important things that we do. First and foremost, our budgets between the House and the Senate actually have a lot of very good things in them. The basis for a lot of this was prior Governor Northam's original budget. And so once we start to be able to go through them, I think there are going to be a lot of positives that we can find from it. But I will be honest, there were a lot of disappointments, particularly in the tax area, like Delegate Price mentioned. One of our goals with our tax system is to be more fair and more just. And a lot of the tax cuts that are being done here really aren't lifting up the people out of poverty that we should be focused on. And so I think that's always something to be important to keep in mind when we're looking at our budget. In terms of smaller budget amendments that are important to the city of Newport News, I was proud to say that we were able to get $300,000 for the entry to Fort Eustis, which I hope once this passes, if it does end up in both the Senate and the House budget, we'll be able to start the process of really renovating, changing, and fixing the entrance to Fort Eustis so that we can avoid any sort of BRAC situation that could be coming forward in the next year or two. It's of a vital importance that we do everything to make sure that we continue to support and lift up our men and women in arms who are stationed at Fort Eustis and at Langley. And I think that that's an important step. So I was proud to be able to work on that and carry that for the city. One of the things that we're blessed with in our city is a university that is a crown jewel of the peninsula. And Christopher Newport University did incredibly well in the House budget, $5 million of which will be able to be utilized to be able to help students who are most financially in need, but also to be able to help with new buildings, particularly the old bank building that is starting to really honestly fall down for the university and needs to be replaced. So we're very excited about that. Senator Mason and Senator Locke were able to get money for Soundscapes, which happens to be one of the best charities and charitable organizations that we have in the city, to be able to lift up and help young people learn music for the first time. And I was so grateful to be able to see that come in the Senate budget. And then finally, one of my original bills ended up in the Senate, in the House budget as well, to be able to let people know about the sites for that have been listed in the Green Book. If you aren't familiar with the Green Book, it was a traveler's guide for travelers of color, beginning in the 1930s and going all the way through the 1960s, and was of vital importance not only for safety, but for all aspects of travel for many communities. And so what we've found is that there are over 300 sites in Virginia that were listed in the Green Book, and we've lost track of many of them. And so what this bill will do is work with the Department of Tourism here to be able to put up markers throughout the state and to officially recognize those sites as historic places throughout the Commonwealth. And I'm very excited that that's going to end up at least in the House budget and probably in the Senate budget as well. One of the other final things I want to note is that we do an incredible amount of work here in the General Assembly in a much smaller time than they do in Washington, D.C. Just to give you a little bit of a better idea, now that we've passed what we call crossover, which is sort of the halfway point of our General Assembly session, over half the bills that were originally filed, almost 2,500, I think it was 2,491, of those, about 1,300 are still active right now. And so that's a tremendous amount of work. If you compare that to what they do in Congress, we're doing the same amount of bills, same amount of work, but we're doing it in 90 days as opposed to what they do full time. I think that's probably one of the geniuses of the Virginia system. Before I kick it to Delegate Simonds, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to at least 3 of the bills that I have that are still alive and going in the Senate and look to be all uncontested, and I hope to have sent to the governor by the end of the week, all of which have to do with either incapacitated adults who or vulnerable adults, making sure that they are taken care of, particularly in regards to those caregivers who end up stealing from them. Senator Mason carried in a companion bill that came out, I think 39 or 40 to, without any opposition. And we saw the same sort of collective excitement in the House as well. So we're very excited to be able to protect those who are suffering from elder abuse. But I do want to give a special shout out to Delegate Simonds for doing some amazing work today on one of her bills regarding educating people who work in our hotels, motels, and the like. I almost said Holiday Inn right there. So I must say I was incredibly impressed with all the work that she did to be able to pass that bill out of Senate Committee in Judiciary, which is a hard thing to do. So without any further ado, I want to give you your Delegate Simonds.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, Judiciary. Who knew that would be such a tough fight? But I was really, really pleased to have support from some of our Newport News hospitality executives. Liz Parker from the Holiday Inn gave me really great feedback on that bill. And, overall, we know we have a human trafficking problem, and we need to empower bystanders to, if they see something, that they know how to say something. And last year I passed a casino human trafficking recognition kind of prevention bill, and then this year we moved on to hotels. So that's one of my bills that is still out there. But I'm Delegate Shelley Simonds. I represent the 94th District in the Virginia House. And I thought I would tell you a little bit about the committees that I'm on. Of course, we started session in early January, and we're going to go to almost mid-March. But I'm on 3 different committees, and I thought I'd tell you about those committees a little bit. I'm on the Privileges and Elections Committee, and the Agriculture and Chesapeake Bay and Natural Resources Committee, and I'm on the Education Committee. And I know a lot of you are really interested in education, so I'm going to try to get there. But first, our work on the Privileges and Elections Committee has been involved with voting rights and making it easier for you all to go out and vote. And of course, in our last 2 sessions, we had great progress with making it a lot easier to vote. And we have Delegate Price to thank for many of those efforts with the Virginia Voting Rights Act, which we are also proud of. But the bad news is there have been a lot of bills out there trying to unravel a lot of our progress. And, I had to vote no against repealing the permanent absentee voter list. I voted no when they wanted to get rid of drop boxes. I voted no on repealing some of the early voting days. And then, of course, my personal story involves a tied election, and in which many ballots arrived after close of business on election day and were never counted. And there was a bill to kind of roll back the clock to that time in 2017 we had made it so ballots would be counted up to 5 days if they came in after the election. So that's the Privileges and Elections Committee. The other committee I'm on is Agriculture and Chesapeake Natural Resources. I have always really enjoyed that committee. I had one of my bills, animal welfare bills, rolled into HB 1350, which seeks to crack down on a company called Envigo. Some of you may have heard about this. It is a dog breeder that breeds beagles for research purposes. And during the pandemic, they had a crisis and had federal charges of animal abuse. So I had a bill cracking down, and it does look like there's bipartisan support for that effort. And I think that we will be successful on cracking down on Envigo. And then I also had an environmental bill involving environmental justice. That was HB 1276. It was a healthy community strategy bill. It did not make it out of the House, but I am still hopeful that we continue working on environmental justice. I think it's a really important issue in areas like Newport News. There's been almost a backlash, some of you may have heard about, with regards to permitting and issues around environmental justice. So we've had, even today in my agriculture committee, we had big debates on the role of citizens in the permitting process and our citizen boards. Other environmental bills, I worked on a mining bill, HB 250, and that bill I found really interesting. Many of you may not know, we have a seam of minerals that